Now it is time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening,
Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. And you actually make it look like it was the easiest thing in the world to sit down with you for an hour. I think a lot of people would want to do it, and I'm sure Liz Cheney is very glad she got the chance to do that. That point she just made about not the lesser of two evils is such an important point to double underline from everything she's written in her book, everything we learned from the January 6th committee. I know plenty of times over the years I've heard people refer to their vote choice as the lesser of two evils. That's not where we are anymore.
No. And I think, Lawrence, one of the things that I didn't expect before reading the book, and I probably should have when I started to see Republican reaction to it, is that a lot of the Republican issue with Liz Cheney is that she is not shy about saying what people are doing wrong. And she does not try to make people feel better about it when they are doing something wrong. She does not go out of her way to say, oh, I understand you had a hard childhood or whatever. This is like meeting some emotional need of yours. You're doing the wrong thing at a time when your country needs you to do the right thing, and I'm going to call you wrong for doing it. And that is the sort of thing that, I mean, you have to be built a certain way to do that. But it also means that you've got a certain courage of your convictions in terms of how seriously people are screwing up and how much we need to course correct. And I find it now amusing to see all these Republicans, all these tough guy Republicans, talking about how much she hurts their feelings. But she's unafraid to do it, and it's worth doing it because of the stakes that she defines so clearly. It's a remarkable thing.
And you know, Rachel, it's the way, in my personal estimate in the 1990s when I was working in the Senate, it's the way about 80% of them were at that time. You know, when we would close the door and have, say, the Democratic senators' policy luncheon, and you have almost, say, 50, we had 57 Democrats at the time. They don't all show up, but almost all of them do. There were some almost healthy, I would say, fistfights break out in that room in terms of just arguing across the table with each other in extremely direct ways. And then that would all kind of calm down into something else. And it would be all a way of getting to a consensus. But people did not pull punches back. They weren't careful about your feelings when they disagreed with you on the tax bill. They just said, this is where I am, and they were very clear about it. I mean, Liz Cheney reminds me so much of the way both Democrats and Republicans handled themselves in Congress in the past. Yeah,
and it's also, like I saw yesterday, I think it was on CNN, Lindsey Graham responding to the claims in her book about the dangerousness of a potential second Trump term. And his take on it was like, oh, yes, I'm sure Liz has a lot of feelings about Donald Trump. And he's just like, actually, dude, no. I don't know if she has any feelings. I know that she doesn't think they're relevant to whether or not we have a democracy anymore. And so, like, trying to put things on her as if she's like, a kid or a little girl or a sad little woman who needs to be placated about her feelings in this, just profoundly misunderstands her force in politics and what she's trying to do here, and like really just gives lie to that kind of laziness, in a way that I'm glad for.
Yeah, I mean, talk about feelings. I mean, Lindsey Graham is just a ball of feelings about Donald Trump, and the feeling is fear. It's nothing but fear of Donald Trump and Trump voters in South Carolina. That's the way he lives his life, in fear of those people. There's one way in which Liz Cheney is extraordinary tonight and remains extraordinary even if we go back retroactively. And that is the number of politicians that I'm aware of where I could watch them make the decision to do something, choose something that would not just hurt their reelection, but pretty much doom their reelection. It's Mario Cuomo refusing to change his position on the death penalty in the 1990s. And sorry, I can't think of anyone since then except Liz Cheney. And so for me, when I was working in government, the trick question for politicians always was, what would you not do to get reelected? And most of them would go blank. They wouldn't be able to follow the sequence of those words. They wouldn't quite understand what you just asked, the concept of something you would not do, to get reelected. So Liz Cheney really, just on that basis alone, of being willing to do something that she knew would pretty much prevent her from getting reelected. And she didn't just choose to do anything. She chose to do the single most important thing that you could ask her to do.
And, you know, people, when it's hypothetical, everybody's a hero, right? Everybody thinks they do the principled thing. We all look at ourselves in history and think, oh, I'd be the resistance fighter, right? But in reality, the reason is, the reason there's so few of those people, and the reason there are so few heroes, is because in reality, when it, you know, when heroism comes up and knocks on your door, it's usually easier to pretend you're asleep. It's usually easier to let things happen and hope somebody else is going to take the rap. And here's somebody who saw it clear-eyed and did it knowing exactly what it would mean.
And Rachel, before you go, as long as we're talking about our Liz Cheney histories and our encounters, I know the last time I was on television with Liz Cheney, which was long before this program, the subject was torture. One of us was in favor, one of us was against. I'd have to check the record to see which one. Yeah. It might be why she's not coming on this program, but it's so. It makes so much sense to me to see the two of you there tonight, because this is the way, again, it used to work in Congress, where you could be adamantly opposed. You could be fighting Liz Cheney all day on, on tax legislation, and then you could be teamed up with her on something else. And that I used to see that all the time. You know, your fiercest opponent today, next week is going to be your most important ally in something. And so I'm so glad to have seen this interview tonight. This is really, this was worth waiting for.
Thanks, Lawrence. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.